Welcome to episode 52 of Last Turn. I'm Bart, and as always, I'm joined by my friend Evan. What's up, dude?
Yo! Not much, dude. Just
Yeah,
enjoying the wonderful, wonderful shadows that are rising
indeed they are rising.
all
It's
over the
been,
place.
or pretty much just in the Hearthstone client.
And, well, yeah, but, I mean, they might sneak into your Black Ops, right?
They may. We may find some shadows in Apex Legends or in War of the Spark when that comes out.
Oh my. But, yeah, so that's another story. We're back at, as always, the beginning of a new Hearthstone meta, and the always the ever-present chorus of Hearthstone players complaining about a few specific classes and a few specific cards.
Oh yeah,
It's like clockwork.
yeah. It makes sense. I mean, this happens pretty much every expansion, and I don't know. Aggro's pretty strong this time, but it's always strong.
It tends to be strong at the beginning of a meta anyway.
Yes, yeah.
It's so hard to say if it necessarily is or isn't more so this time. There's definitely no Razakis Priest or anything like that. But there's also no Pirate Warrior.
Truth.
I think people get complacent a little bit. Newsflash, right?
Yeah, it's but I mean, we'll see. Things are really early, so like it's tough to say what will stick if anything. And I think like right now people have just found some like very efficient low synergy or medium synergy lists that
Hmm.
tend to just be clocks, and they'll like try to, punch out any deck that is playing a nonlinear strategy. Um, this is very common in early expansion. So,
Hmm. Yeah,
uh,
Pirate Warriors was just like a degenerate example of a deck
yes,
that does that.
yeah,
But we're actually exactly 2 weeks out from the release of the set. So we have, some data, but that's basically what we want to kind of try and take a closer look at today is what has been going down for the past 2 weeks. There's always so much that happens at the very beginning of the meta, which
yeah.
makes it, I think, harder to find what is material and what is going to be relevant for the next, 4 months, and what
Hmm.
was just like the 2 weeks, a fad during didn't Shutterwalk like it basically was never good, but at the very beginning of the Witchwood expansion, it was like all over the place. The first 2 weeks were were covered in Shutterwalk, but it wound up not actually being an especially powerful deck.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, yeah, I think that's right. It was never tier one, but like definitely it was an incredibly strong day zero deck, which Disguised Toast, piloted this pretty combo heavy greedy version that would try to OTK you with Shutterwalk, and he piloted that like with a very high win rate to Legend or close to Legend.
Hmm.
And so that was a very, very strong, first day deck that was not aggro, which is cool. Uh,
Hmm.
and eventually, I think that people discovered like a less greedy and more mid-rangey version of Shutterwalk is actually a viable deck. So that saw, maybe tier one or tier two or tier three play, whatever tiers mean. It just wasn't like the best deck at any point, but it was still like a deck you could play and not lose with.
Correct. The tiers, it varies from site to site. If
Yeah.
I think though that Vicious Syndicate never and pointed this out that they never categorized it as tier one at any point.
Mm, that's interesting.
But that's just one opinion. The point though is that I think the version that everyone was playing that first day proliferated, but it was far from what was really good for the next 4 months.
Definitely.
And that's got to be happening right now. And there's also got to be maybe some potential Pirate Warriors, or maybe not that far, but like um, mid range Rogue.
Yeah.
When Bone Mare cost 7 mana, it kind of gradually formed into a very, very powerful deck, but was definitely not assembled in its ideal form at the beginning of the meta. That would be the deck you want to find.
So, I mean, certainly, you'd want to find a deck that's like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be Rogue, but this time around, Rogue appears to do very, very well.
Yeah, maybe that's a good way. While I was speaking, I was trying to think of how do we figure out, how do we go through this? How do we break down all of the many things that are going on in an organized fashion? Maybe we should just do Blizzard order with the classes.
Yeah, that's sensible. So yeah, I think that's a good way to make sure we don't jump around too much, and we also actually hit every class.
I think there's something to be said for every class,
I
but
think so too.
the something is way less for some classes and way more for others, and that difference will really, I think, give color to the latter, which is really what we're trying to do right now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I agree. We're mostly talking about, the ladder in the rank 5 to legend region. So we're not going to be focusing on, I guess, any particular part of that region, but these are decks you'll find people who are trying to win playing. Sometimes.
And you might even be one of those people.
Yeah, maybe.
In which case, I would say you're in the right place. Not to skip too far ahead, but one of the cards that people keep complaining about is Dr. Boom being too powerful, and thus pushing Warrior into an unfair position. And you would be able to speak from the same position, aren't you, a doctor?
I am, in fact. But I am not too powerful. I think I'm perfectly balanced.
You don't have infinite value?
No, I have limited value.
Yeah, I mean, the same here. Infinite value definitely seems like maybe it would be an unfair amount.
Yeah, I think it's hard to get infinite value. You need to be like Elon Musk tier to do that. You need to have
not many people.
Not many, yeah, certainly not a lot of people. But I don't know, knowledge is power or something. Anyway, Druid.
Let's do Druid.
Yeah, so Druid's doing some interesting stuff. They have a token deck right now, which is not all that surprising.
Yeah, especially that kind of seemed to be the most resonant theme or archetype that they were trying to push with this round of Druid cards.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was wondering what was going to happen with Druid because Druid just lost some of its best cards in nerfs. It's not like the Spreading Plague nerf where the cards changed in 1 mana cost and didn't really change in their play frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really plays Wild Growth and Nourish anymore. So they were hit really, really hard. So even before the set was spoiled, I was curious about what direction they would take Druid, and I figure it's actually pretty easy for them to just lean on tokens because it's something Druid's been historically good at. So it jives with their class identity. It doesn't jive with cheating on mana, really, not anymore at least. So I thought that perhaps they would take in that direction, and Druid's always had minor beast synergy and sort of related aggro stuff because they're good at everything, and that appears to be exactly what's going on here. Is that we have this deck that's trying to go wide and buff a bunch of dudes and smash you.
That sums up the plan. Soul of the Forest is a really good classic card for that strategy when there have been other token Druid decks that weren't just leaning on turn 1 Vicious Fledgling, at least. They would play that card. I remember playing that in a couple different decks and being like, whoa, it's kind of cool. This card is really flavorful and fun, and it was often just not good enough. So let's say you have 4 mana and you want to win the game, like there's Chillwind Yeti, So why spend 4 mana and not get anything? And also just the Druid decks never really were a combo deck in the way that Priest has been a combo deck or Mage has been a combo deck. So there was it was always a cool card that I was very happy to see is being played, and it actually is just extremely good.
Yeah, it's a strong card. Yeah, I mean, I think Druid's definitely had some combo-y decks, in certain formats, like Wild with Starliner, but...
Oh, right, there's Aviana. See, I haven't played enough Wild. That is a good point. Aviana really throws a wrench into that statement.
Yeah, I mean,
That's true.
Wild's a special place. Also, I think like way back in the day, there was people called a combo druid with the Soul of the Forest and Savage Roar.
Oh, you mean Force of Nature Savage Roar?
Force of Nature, that's what I mean.
I'm. I don't know. What back in the day when I was doing that, I called it playing Druid.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically mid-range.
Those two cards were just in every deck, and none of the decks were like Quest Mage. Though I guess there was also Malagos Druid and Togwaggle Druid with Twig of the World Tree. But it's always been very effective for Druids to just like put bodies out on the
Yeah.
board in an efficient way. Partly because they were so good at gaining mana that they could do it better than everybody else. Like you said, this is sort of their other way to be a little cheaty with their most basic class identity, which is to instead take cards like the new one that's 3 mana, give your minions +1/+1, Twin Spell, Blessing of the Ancients.
Good card.
That card with 1 minion out sucks. That card with 7 minions out is insane. And so there's, rather than like cheating on your mana by getting extra mana out of an unfair Innervade or something like that, they're cheating on their mana by getting a lot of extra value out of these kinds of spells. Or Savage Roar, which with 1 minion out could do essentially nothing, and with 7 minions out might win you the game almost every single time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so it's interesting, like, so yeah, you're right. You can go wide and play these cards, and they're going to crush your opponent. And Druid just has like a bunch of different cards in the deck that help it go wide, and a bunch of cards that help it buff its board. Savage Roar, Blessing of the Ancients, Power of the Wild. And as far as going wide, it has the Whisper of the Forest or whatever it's called. Cards like Acorn Bearer that can just like, fill your hand with the ability to play, lots of minions at once for not a lot of mana. Dreamway Guardians to sort of gradually build up a board over time. Cards like the Forest Aid, but also Soul of the Forest that help your board like be sticky. That's something that Druid's really good at.
Mm-hmm.
And this deck is really leaning on that. So that's an interesting flavor of Token Druid, because that is not always the way Token Druids looked. Like you mentioned, the turn 1 Vicious Fledgling or turn 1, 3/2/2s deck was not that kind of deck. You didn't want to make a sticky board. You wanted to make a completely unfair board on turn 1, or just get a Bittertide Hydra out and smash your opponent's face before they could cast their 2-mana spell.
Right, Bittertide Hydra is completely inappropriate in the current lists.
Oh yeah, it doesn't make sense at all, because you're not trying to go tall. You're not trying to make one or several threats that are just impossible to beat at the stage of the game. You're trying to make a board that you can't clear.
I don't know if I've ever heard someone say going tall instead of going wide. It's perfect. Bittertide Hydra is so tall.
It's so tall. Yeah, that's I think people use tall and wide in Civilization. The Civilization games to refer to like different strategies for higher civ. It's the same idea. You invest a lot in a few buildings, or you make many buildings.
Yeah, but in that sense, there's at least the naturally literal interpretation. If you invest more in like a tower, it'll probably be a taller tower.
Oh, sure.
But not all bigger minions are taller. There's things that are like oozes are wide. But I knew what you meant. That's brilliant. I'm gonna start saying that.
So it's interesting though. This is absolutely a go wide deck, and this does have yet another thing that Druid is good at, which is making sticky boards. So Soul of the Forest is like the canonical card for doing this, because it's classic and like it's in a lot of these decks. But if you've ever played against the Eggs Druid deck in Wild, it plays like Haunted Creeper and Soul of the Forest and like just a bunch of cards like that, like Neurbian Eggs, that you just don't want them to die, and they buff them so that they create this board that you kind of have to deal with. But when you deal with it, it doesn't actually change in power level at all. And this deck is trying to do something like that. So cards like the Forest Aid is actually like secretly a really sticky Druid card, because you play it and you have a full board that your opponent has to deal with, or else you're going to Savage Roar them. And they deal with it, and then you cast the Forest Aid again.
That's the I was blanking. 8 mana, Twin Spell, make 5 2/2 Trents.
That's exactly right.
That card really that's a really good card.
I'm shocked. I totally wrote the spell off when I saw it, but it's excellent in this deck.
It's easy to underestimate it but like that's kind of, I guess, just a great, like, it's great for a bunch of different reasons. It's a great top end thing, but I guess one of the features of Hearthstone that card is taking advantage of, and why it's good, is that a lot of decks will struggle to have many ways to clear boards. A board clear effect is often
Oh yeah.
something that you're going to be, if you're playing a control deck, you'll have some,
Hmm.
but otherwise you might not have any, and you're still only going to have like less than 20% of your deck is going to be board clears. Maybe if you are playing Warlock, you're going to have a more substantial amount, but since it will necessarily poke at your opponent's one of your opponent's limiting reagents, one of the resources they're more shy on, and also the fact that it you represent lethal with it from your hand. So this
Yeah.
is almost like a non-Hearthstone thing, or a thing they don't want to be too common, where you can just win from your hand. It's not, because you're winning with a full board that survived a turn. But if
Yeah.
you have 5/2/2s and it's turn 4, you're probably just going to do 10 damage with them. But if it's a late turn game, late late game turn, maybe your last turn, and you have a pretty good grip and 10 mana, if those 5/2/2 survive, you're winning almost every single time.
Yeah, it's definitely true. So it's really interesting. You actually bring up a really excellent point about board clears. And that I wanted to make a point. This rotation took with it Spirit Lash, Defile, Psychic Scream. Those are just three examples.
Mm.
It took Volcano, but Shaman got a replacement for that. But like
Mm.
Priest is pretty light on the board clears right now.
Yeah.
And Warlock's a bit lighter than usual. Typically, like at least in the previous standard, they were kind of the board clear class, but right now they don't really have a lot of that at all. So the board clear king right now is probably Warrior with Brawl and then that mech.
The Dinomatic, they also have Warpath.
They also have Warpath. Yeah, Warpath's also a really good card. So it's pretty interesting. Like it's a good time to go wide. I think that a lot of classes can't deal with it,
Mm.
and there's not a whole lot of board clears right now, and there are not a lot of decks that can just very easily deal with that kind of board. So you kind of just have to race this deck, and they're still a tempo deck. They could be a little slow. They're slower than like a Speed Hunter or something, but they're still good and they're still fast.
It's a nice change from turn 1 Vicious Fledgling to see, like turn 3 Landscaping or
Yeah,
something like that. But it's still good. Like,
yeah,
there's definitely token druid lists that run the card Landscaping effectively, which is really cool, because that card was definitely like on my list of cards to make a joke about. And it does actually, like, getting a 4/4 for 3 mana that's divided in two is kind of exactly what that deck wants to do.
yeah, totally. I was pretty surprised to see a couple of the cards being played, but no, you're absolutely right. That card is good in this deck. It's just the right shell for it. Um, that's kind of all Druid is doing, though, right?
That I'm looking at some lists of classes and decks they're playing, and it looks like every class has at least two
Mm.
different meaningful decks, but Druids just stuck to tokens.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
They're not good at everything for the first time ever.
Yeah, it's that's a good thing. I think people are really sick of seeing bigger Druid decks. We got out of the Ultimate Infestation universe, so no one's really eager to go back there.
I don't think we need any more 5/5 ghouls coming out of Malfurion for a while.
No, no. So how about Hunter?
Hunters doing great, right? There's for one, like, mechs. All of my predictions about mechs from almost a year ago, well, not almost a year ago, but 8 months ago, are kind of coming to fruition in this class. There's a almost exclusively mech deck. It looks awful, honestly. Like, if you look at a list, you're like, wow, this is crap. There's like no removal. There's like no weapons. Like, it does not look like a hunter deck. And then it's not like the token druid deck, which sure, it's a bunch of stuff that's making minions, but it's also a bunch of ways to pump them. This is just like, it looks just like a big old pile of scrap metal, a big old mass of minion cards, which probably, if that ever worked, it was just the very first season of Hearthstone ever. But because of Magnetic, it gets real mean.
Yeah, Magnetic is relevant. I mean, I guess Hunter right now probably has the best Magnetic cards. And it's even Ziliax is a Magnetic card, and that card is fantastic.
Oh my god, it gets. I mean, there's a couple classes that once all the once rotation happened and we lost all of those cards, the prowess of Ziliax started to really shine.
Yeah, I mean, it is a strong card, especially in like this kind of early meta. Like oftentimes, like being able to kill something and then just being a taunt with lifesteal is exactly what you want to try to race or control the board. So that card's doing well, and this deck takes advantage of it just as well, better actually than pretty much any other deck. Although it's good in every deck, so being able to make one of your good cards even better is pretty good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of Death Rattle synergy here too, which is interesting. Kind of surprising. Like Hunter lost probably the majority of its good Death Rattle synergy cards. And with those cards went a bunch of their really strong Death Rattle synergy decks, but it still has some interesting ones in Fireworks Tech, which is from like a set or two ago, right?
Yeah, that was one of those cards that like looked really good, and then it just didn't come together, but it definitely is now.
Yeah, it's yeah, absolutely. It looked potentially strong if the right support existed, and I think it exists now, or at least the right meta exists.
Yeah, the relativity, the relative meta. This is so the Replicating Menace was another card that I was actually pretty stoked about when Boomsday came out, and then it just didn't do anything. But I think it's a real heavy player in this deck, and sort of for the same reason the Token Druid deck is working. It makes your board really sticky.
Yeah, sticky board is good. And the same thing with Mekaru. That was a card that like didn't see a whole lot of play, but is in this deck.
It's remarkable how little play it saw because it's such a good card.
Yeah, it's Possessed Villager, and that's a card that we know is playable, but I guess it just needed the right deck, and maybe this card isn't good with Dire Mole around,
That's also and Firefly, right?
And Fire. Oh yeah, with Firefly, this Possessed Villager is not a good card.
Yeah, I think you're right though. It often vexed me why Mekaru was so underplayed, but I think it was just Firefly and Dire Mole being so universally good that it was kind of hard to find room for something like this. But I have also seen Token Druids playing it, and it makes perfect sense. It's another cheap, sticky minion.
Yeah, it's great in that deck. That deck is looking pretty much exactly for that. And Hunter is also, it has this like sort of beast aggro deck, which looks super mean, very low to the ground. It's taking advantage of Master's Call, which is a strong card in a deck that when it's just 3 mana, draw 3 minions from your deck. That's a really strong card.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially in a minion deck, a deck that's just trying to like punch your opponent to death. So it seems pretty good.
Yeah, that's kind of like that's like very similar to what was one of the most effective Hunter decks before rotation. It's got Zul'jin, it's got a bunch of spells that make minions, and so you'll get to replay them when you play Zul'jin, and it's got just exclusively beasts, so you get to take advantage of Master's Call, and Tundra Rhino plus Timberwolf, you can like burst a bunch of damage down. That's definitely kind of what it was doing before, but certainly with new cards like Unleash the Beast. It's also got a Malagos deck, essentially a spell damage deck with the new legendary. I don't know what her relationship necessarily to Sylvanas is, but I'm assuming her sister, Verisa, Windrunner, and Malagos makes for a lot of damage with Rapid Fire.
Yeah, so that deck is like not really doing so good anymore, which is not surprising because there's a lot of warriors around, and I think warrior kind of beats those sorts of decks. But yeah, we talked a little bit about Spell Hunter being maybe dead because they were losing Emerald Spellstone, but this deck is interesting because it is basically Spell Hunter. Also, they don't have Rexar anymore. It's basically Spell Hunter, but it is leaning a little harder on spells that make minions, so it doesn't really feel like a Spell Hunter deck when you're playing it. It just feels like a slower kind of mid-range control type deck.
Mm-hmm.
And the win condition is you're trying to play Geppetto to draw an Alexstrasza and a Malygos from your deck that will both cost 1 mana, and then you spend 2 mana to get your opponent to 15, and then play Malygos and just, I don't know, play basically any of your direct damage spells and kill them.
Yeah, that'll even beat a warrior if you manage to pull that series of things off.
Yes, yeah, that's the thing, is like it's inconsistent because to beat warrior you really need the 1 mana Malygos. If you don't have it, you're probably not beating warrior. The deck can,
and the Alex.
Yeah, absolutely.
You really need both. But the problem is that in Hearthstone you draw cards.
Yeah, and I mean, like it's against warrior. Traditionally, you could pretty much just YOLO Alexstrasza them and be like assured that they're not going to gain the life back. But that deck packs Ziliax, so YOLO Alexstrasza isn't quite as good as it was against previous control warrior decks, where you just do that and then continue to chip at their armor, because they can gain the health back. But
they can frequently find ways to get extra Ziliax as well.
Oh yeah, that's true.
From Omega Assembly or the Dock.
Yeah, they just have to play the armor up game against you, and you will probably not assemble enough damage because they can pressure you a little bit and just use their control cards to stop you from chipping at them. But the deck can assemble a lot of damage. I mean, Rapid Fire with Malygos, that's exactly the card you want with Malygos. It's
beautiful.
It's just 2 mana, 12 damage. It's also like a good early game play against fast deck. It also, Mark Shot is another card that this deck got. Deal 4 damage to a minion, discover a spell. That is frequently another copy of Rapid Fire or another Unleash the Beast or something like that.
That card is really good.
Very surprising how good it is. I did not expect it to be as good as it is.
It's not like a huge tempo play, spending 4 mana on 4 damage generally, and it's unlike Jade Lightning, you don't get a dude out of it.
Yes.
But some Hunter cards are just like, some Hunter spells are actually just so efficient that if you get to pick the one you need in the moment, that kind of winds up making up for it. I think that's part of it.
I think so. That's an interesting point, because it's my baseline was Jade Lightning. It's that, like, okay, well, we need if we're going to do 4 mana for 4 damage, we need to get a minion, and this doesn't. It actually just draws a card. So that is, like, a lot of the time worse than developing a creature in this game, especially because it's not drawing a card from your deck, it's just drawing a card from a random pool. But you're right that Hunter spells are generally very efficient, and this you can even curve into other spells like Unleash the Beast out of this, or you can assemble more damage in your hand, or, there's just a lot of really excellent conditional Hunter cards.
Hunter's Mark can, like, suck or be amazing. Same for, Baited Arrow. That can be really, really unfair.
Oh yeah, that's a card that this deck main decks. I was really surprised to see that, but it's actually good.
Oh yeah, that card's got some play to it. Even without spell damage, but if you maybe throw a Blood Mage Thalnos in there, you get a little bit more, and scoot it around a little bit, and also Rapid Fire, you mentioned, can really hook you up.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty strong. So Hunter's doing a lot of stuff.
It's amazing. I was looking at Twitter, somebody has a secret Hunter deck with 2 masked contenders. If you don't know what that guy does, I don't blame you. He's a 3 mana neutral from Rastakhan, 2/4, Battle Cry, and Death Rattle. Put a secret into play from your deck. and like Eaglehorn Bow, but person did an excellent job climbing with it. I'm sure there's plenty of validity to the deck. I think Hunter's in a really strong spot. The fact that they are one of the only 3 classes with a hero card is definitely helping.
Oh yeah, Zul'jin is good.
I mean, I'm looking at the mech list. The mech list doesn't even have a Zul'jin. Like, I think Hunter's just really, really strong right now.
It seems to be in a good spot.
And they've got they've got some really cute combos with magnetic because they have Venomizer, which is a 2/2 mech with magnetic that has poisonous, and then Missile Launcher, which is a 6 mana 4/4 mech with magnetic that at the end of your turn deals 1 damage to everything else. So that's a pretty common way to just get completely blown out by this deck, is they play like a 6/6 or some other combination of mechs that at the end of their turn kills every other minion every time.
Yeah, it's very good.
Which is gross.
Cool, yeah, I mean, the decks with synergy are super strong.
Or Ziliax, just if you deal 7 damage and you're going to gain 7 health.
Yeah. It seems like Hunter's got a lot going for it. It's a good time to get a Golden Rexar if that's not something you have.
I think that's actually still... Thank you for suggesting that, Bart. I believe that's one of my non-gold classes.
Same here. It's one of my 2.
But the deck is full of commons from Boomsday. It's basically commons from Boomsday.deck.
Yeah. It seems like a bunch of these Hunter decks are pretty cheap. It's a good place to start if you're trying to play competitively on the ladder, but you maybe don't, you're free to play or you don't have like a big collection. Good place to start.
Mm-hmm. And Ursatron is another really great card that one's new. That one's not from Boomsday. That's another thing to note is they continue to give some of these classes some mech support, and Hunter's one of them.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, it's nice. I mean, they can always build out synergies across multiple sets, especially like upon a rotation, then they don't have to worry about a bunch of old problem causers that they already know about.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
What about what's Mage doing?
That is a very good question. I think they're mostly conjuring stuff up. That definitely seemed like a good strategy. Let me see where they're on like the tier list here.
Yeah, that's Conjurer Mage is pretty strong right now. I think that's the strongest mage deck, kind of like no matter how you cut it. So, what you're trying to do here is you're trying to I guess there's other decks that are doing pretty well, but the Conjurer Mage deck seems to be the flashiest. What you do is you are, playing kind of a typical. Well, actually, it's not a typical mage game at all. You're playing a very minion-heavy deck, and you're trying to play Khadgar into something like Power of Creation, which is going to summon, a 6/6, 2/6/6 minions, and Khadgar is just going to double that, so that you're summoning 4. And that's a combo you can play from hand. You're just getting not 6/6, 6 cost. So you're just getting 4 6-costed minions, which is big, as long as you don't low roll.
Yeah, and you are gonna get to discover one, so the odds that you legitimately low roll are pretty bad, and the odds that you hit a high roll like Cairn Bloodhoof are like pretty decent.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God! 4 Cairns. That's so hard to beat. There's no deck that can really beat that right now.
Yeah, just move on.
Yeah, that's a lost game. Or what I've seen this deck do to win a lot of games against me is get out a Mountain Giant and then play Khadgar and Conjurer's Calling and just blow up the Mountain Giant, and you get a 7/8 taunt, but you get 4 of them.
Conjurer's Calling is such a good card. Jesus.
Yeah, it's interesting. It doesn't it's unassuming looking, but it does a lot of stuff. It heals the minion.
That's almost that's the basic. If you don't have Khadgar, that's basically what you're really hoping you can do, is play one of your Mountain Giants, or I think they're also using another minion that kind of cheats on mana in most of the lists. The Rabble Bouncer, the 2/7 taunt that costs 7 but costs 1 less for each minion your opponent has. Or some lists are using dragons, and they have cards like Crowd Roaster, which you don't really mind blowing them up, because when you play them, you get a bunch of value out of them, and their stats are below what you would want for 7 mana. So you can just Conjurer's Calling it, and with reasonable odds, get a better minion, And it has Twin Spell.
Yeah.
That is
The fact
just
that it has,
insane.
the fact that it has Twin Spell, I think, is what makes it a value card. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, you're just basically spending mana to go even for the most part. You're spending a card to like kind of randomly summon another possibly stronger minion, but it has some setup cost. But it has Twin Spell, so like you can do it a couple times. And the deck is synergistic enough that it can like abuse it, with Mountain Giant.
Mm-hmm.
And also, yeah, just value cards like Crowd Roaster. Like once your Crowd Roaster roasts something, it's not really it's not the kind of minion you want to like just hang around. It's not going to like win the game on its own. But if you can blow it up somehow, then like great, that's awesome. You got a ton of value.
There's some pretty great 7 drops too. 7 is a really good number.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, it also has Astromancer, which is a card from the last meta with Mage.
It's another really good one. It's great when your spells have Twin Spell and leave a card in your hand after you play them. These all work out really well for the deck, but I think if Conjurer's Calling didn't have Twin Spell, then this deck would just get rolled by Control Warrior every time. Because they would they'd have like a few turns where they do something cool, and then Warrior would just blow it all up, and then that would be it. But I've been playing a bit of Fatigue Warrior, and I have not beaten this deck every time, and that's because sometimes they just keep making more Mountain Giants, and then you can only kill 2 or 3 Mountain Giants so many times, even with Warrior, until you can't handle it anymore.
Yeah, because it has other minions in it. It's not like it's not going to pressure you and then it's going to try to do that and you just brawl them once and it's over. Like they're playing minions that are big and chunky and like tough to deal with. Another
really meaningful card to point out, because of Khadgar, is Messenger Raven, which is a 3-mana 3/2 mage minion. It's also a beast, and it will discover a mage minion for you, and so you can get an extra Khadgar.
Very good. Yeah, so this is it seems like a cool deck. It's not one I've played at all, but something I'd like to experiment with a little bit.
It's a really funky looking deck list that I probably also wouldn't have appreciated it if I just saw the list, but having played against it, I know that this is definitely a serious deck. I could see this lasting through the next 4 months.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of expensive-ish utility minions that are like actually synergistic in this deck because of things like Conjurer's Calling. So, cards like Mossy Har or Crowd Roaster or Rabble Bouncer are like basically tech cards. Depending on what the meta looks like, you can cycle in various numbers of those, and that helps the deck's sort of mid to top end reflect the meta a little bit. And like that kind of flexibility is fantastic.
Oh yeah, this deck would love Primordial Drake.
Oh yeah. The Primordial Drake is like built for this deck.
But Mossy Horror, yeah, that's all, like having stuff like that around is for sure a reason why it's contending with Token Druid.
Yep, absolutely. That's a very good tech card right now. For sure.
It doesn't look like Spell Damage Mage is really, or Burn Mage is really coming together right now. Anyway.
No, I tried to theorycraft that a little bit. Like, the Geppetto Malagos Alexstrasza package is actually all in neutral. So I thought a bunch about what classes could take advantage of that the best. And I think Hunter is just the answer because they can pump out the most damage. I tried playing a mage deck, but you basically cannot beat Warrior with that deck. You just like that matchup is impossible. You don't have enough damage spells.
Right. It's a big issue is that Rapid Fire can go face and Ray of Frost cannot.
Ray of Frost cannot, unfortunately.
That was one of my first discoveries day one of the new meta, was I properly read that card. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. That's okay. I mean, there's still other sets this year to come out and change the effectiveness of these cards. And like a 1-mana Twin Spell card in Mage, like that seems like something that could potentially see play if there's enough spell casting synergy.
Yeah, if Flamewaker were around, or Firewalker as I like to call him, that would be much more of a go-to. And I'm not I'm not going to complain about the position of mage. The best mage deck is all about Khadgar.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. The best mage deck is a very cool deck right now. A synergistic one too, and one that like can tech a little bit. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I expect that to stick around because like I said, even if something much more like control oriented and removal heavy were to become more dominant, I still think the strategy would work.
I think so too. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Shall we talk to Uther?
Yeah, I mean he's not doing a whole lot.
No, he's not. He's definitely trying to like imitate Rexar with the
Yeah.
sweet mech synergy, but he just doesn't have the same stuff.
No, it looks like yeah, it looks like there's kind of like these mech flavored decks that are also running some secrets and like, Mysterious Blade and Sunreaver Spy and stuff, which is cool. I mean, these are Mysterious Fire War Axe is a good card, and so is Totem Golem. So
Yeah,
um, it makes sense that Uther is trying to play those cards, but the mech synergy in this deck is like what, War Gear? The 5-mana 5/5 with magnetic? Not horrible.
no, it's not the worst. I would say the best Paladin mech card would be the Egg. They have a 5-mana 0/5 Egg that when it dies they get an 8/8 mech dinosaur. And magnetizing something on that egg can be brutal.
It looks like not a lot of the lists, at least on HS Replay, are running that though. A lot of them are running Mechanical Weld.
Welp.
Yeah, I mean that's understandable though, because like while you're right, getting like this magnetic recipient 0/5 egg is awesome. Like it comes out pretty early. It's an 0/5 egg, which is like it's not super free to kill that.
Yeah.
So Paladin's not doing a whole lot right now. Its win rate is actually quite low, and it's not doing much more than just playing like crappy aggro.
Yep. The Kangar's Endless Army dream has yet to really be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see if there's any time. It's like I guess now or the next couple expansions. So I think that the power is potentially there. I mean, these mech lists do appear to be running Kangar's Endless Army, at least some of them. But who knows if that's actually good for the deck.
I would think if you're really trying to play aggro, you might not get much out of that card, versus if you really commit yourself to it, if you stick to things like Mechanical Whelp and Ziliax, of course, and magnetizing War Gears onto them, and also magnetizing a Noyo module, which is another mech, or Paladin exclusive mech, which is pretty solid. It's a 2/4 Taunt Divine Shield. That's if you magnetize that onto the 8/8 dinosaur, the 7/7 dragon, or the Mechanical Whelp itself, that's going to be pretty meaningful, and it'll come back from Kangar's Endless Army. But it's just clearly not working out too well.
No, it's not amazing.
I would guess if I were gonna go on ladder and play Paladin right now, I would definitely play Holy Wrath and Shirvala. If there's a best Paladin deck right now, that's probably it, and I think that's the kind of deck that would easily not be well represented on any of our the websites that we're looking at that are analyzing stats. So if you want to go play Uther, that's my pitch. Get a baleful banker. Talk to your banker. I actually saw a list. I think it was Zenflash was playing it with Sunreaver, not Spy, the other Sunreaver card. It's the 5-mana 4/4 neutral battle cry. If you have a card in your hand, a spell in your hand that costs more than 5, you get to deal 4 damage.
Yeah.
So between some copies of that card and some copies of True Silver Champion and your hero power, you can hopefully get that 5 damage in and then finish them off with Holy Wrath.
Yeah, for sure. that's possibly strong.
Yeah, don't try this at
But
home, of course.
yeah, right. Don't spend dust on it. If you have the bankers lying around, suit them up and get in there. But if not,
And if you don't have a Shrivala, you should just go make one right now. That card's awesome,
it's a pretty cool card.
especially with prismatic lens. I'm so glad that works.
Oh yeah. No, that is definitely really cool. So, yeah, I mean, Paladin's found, I don't know. Maybe we'll see more out of them later.
He's on the
What
low
about,
end though right now.
oh yeah, what about Priest?
Priest, I haven't actually been seeing much of it on ladder. I'm also
Same.
pretty sure it's in the low area. It was one of the things that was like common on day one when everyone wanted to bust out Mass Resurrection and Katrina Muerta, but I don't see him now.
Yeah, Priest is not doing anything really. It's pretty low in terms of win rate overall, like on regardless of the stats website you're looking at. The best decks appear to be like Resurrect Priest or Wall Priest, but neither of them are super well represented, and neither of them are really doing all that well. I think Priest just lost far too many tools in the rotation that were not replaced.
hmm
So we'll have to see them get back some board clears before they can really, take on a meaningful role that's at least a meaningful role that is like class identity appropriate.
Yeah, you pointed out already both Spirit Lash and more significantly Psychic Scream. You will be missed by
Yep.
me at least, but
Yeah.
that was a huge hit on what it was going to try to do, like controller combo wise, and then they don't have Duskbreaker anymore, so minion wise, they're definitely not where they were either.
No, certainly not. Yeah, they're not in like a super amazing place.
The abundance of Resurrect cards, I think, is what made Wall Priest what it was before rotation, because that was definitely a very strong deck before rotation. And I wasn't particularly happy about that. I don't know how everybody else felt about it, but that deck was definitely a little annoying. And I'm sure some people, including me, are happy that Wall Priest isn't as big of a thing anymore. But I think both that deck's success and just, Big Priest or whatever you want to call it, Resurrect Priest, they both have way less. They don't have Eternal Servitude, for example. Way fewer
Yeah.
good ways of reviving stuff. And Silence Priest, I was thinking that would have something going on for it. Mostly because of Arcane Watcher, the 3-mana 5/6. That just like 3-mana 5/6, like I'm on board already. And you don't even need to silence it. You could just play a Bloodmage Thalnos and you get to attack with it. But that deck's also not working out.
Yeah, I feel like there's too many like it's not enough to just play one of those in a Sun Fury Protector anymore. That's like a pretty old school thing to do in Hearthstone.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't really seen just like big derpy guys do too much, even like in Priest recently. So there used to be like that flower that couldn't attack. That was in Angoro.
Right, Razor Petal Lasher.
Yeah. So even the combo Priest decks just tended to go with like just random taunts like Tar Creeper and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really the direction that that Priest or Warlock have gone for many years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's it's unfortunate because I do agree that they got a lot of new versions of these cards, and like then it's anyone's game whether these decks could actually come out and do something cool, and it seems like they didn't. But now is a time where there's a lot of support for that. So I think that just the aggro decks are like a little too powerful, where like one taunt just doesn't stop them anymore.
Yeah.
Like a deck like Token Druid doesn't care about one taunt; it just plows through it and makes its board again.
Yeah, I mean, if Priests were playing a bunch of board wipes, then they might be able to do something.
Oh yeah, but they're not.
They certainly are not. And
Yeah, they also don't have the Shadow Visions, which is really strong card in combo Priest. That's
yeah,
gone too.
that is a huge hit.
Yeah.
That would even
Uh,
even having that around would at least make playing Wild Pyromancer a much more legitimate option in Priest. But yeah, have you been playing any of these classes we mentioned on ladder? Druid, Hunter, Mage, Paladin, or Priest?
no, but I have been playing the next one.
Oh my! I believe in Blizzard order that would be Rogue.
That is Rogue.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of this deck. So Rogue, Tempo Rogue is really strong right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it turns out that Waggle Pick, as predicted, is a fantastic card.
Oh yeah, that card is that card is it.
Yeah, it's just like what you were saying too with the Corsair. Like you just the deck plays Waggle Pick, Corsair, and Raiding Party, and like oftentimes you can just in the on turn 4 with a prep, or later than that, or just turn 3 into turn 4, you can play a Waggle Pick and 1 to 2 Corsairs and just have this huge tempo swing that a lot of decks really can't compete with.
Yeah, it's enough for most decks. Token Druid definitely has an edge against that rogue deck, though.
I agree with that 100% because this deck is not super fast. This is a deck that's trying to beat you on like turn 7 or 8, and it can do it earlier than that if you with the best draws. But like for the most part, it's actually pretty slow before turn 4. It's not like doing a whole lot. It's got a bunch of 3 mana 1/5s, like the thing that makes 2 lackeys. Amazing card, by the way. Lackeys are really good. Um, but it also has like saps and um, eviscerates and stuff. So it's
Mm,
not like a super duper fast deck. It has anywhere from 2 to 4 1 drops. It's not running like 5 or 6. So
mm-hmm.
it can get overrun by a deck like Druid. It's also Rogue, which is not amazing at board clearing. And like the best option it has is Fan of Knives, which is just like often not good enough.
Very often, though. I mean, like I think a lot of rogue decks still, or at least a lot of rogues, are choosing to use Fan of Knives because of how quickly you have to just scoop to Whispering Woods if
Yeah.
you don't have that card, and how you can that kind of like is like one of your few ways of winning against Token Druid is to kind of go all in on making 1/1s and not protecting them, and then you have the Fan of Knives. But the 1 drops, like it's also that they don't have Dire Maul and Firefly. So most of the decks, if they're using 1 drops at all, it would be like Southsea Deckhand, Deadly Poison, maybe Mekaru, but not definitely not stuff that would be good against clearing all those minions.
Yeah, so I mean, I have seen some lists react by using Crystallizer, which is neutral. So
Crystallizer. Oh right, the Dire Mole that also deals 5 to you and gives you 5 armor.
right, the Dire Mold, it's an epic instead of common. um,
Yeah,
but it's yeah. So I've seen that, but I've also teched in Dreadcell Corsair, which is good in the mirror.
I've been
Uh,
seeing that. I've been seeing people put that guy in, and I'm like, "Where's Patches?"
yeah, yeah. It's unfortunate that there's no patches. This is a deck that would love patches. But yeah, I've been running Corsair just like whenever I see other rogues, on days where rogues are really common, it does really well. It also does well against warrior.
Hmm.
Oftentimes they're hoping to, super collider you and really just ruin your day, or shuffle some bombs into your deck, and that card can help you survive either of those instances.
Yeah, those the waggle pick. I mean, if you surprise break your opponent's waggle pick when they're not ready, you can really put them back by essentially also partially sapping them. That's a
Yeah,
really good point. And then
it is strong.
the
I
other
mean,
that warrior weapon that puts bombs in is also just there's a lot of value in each single durability. So taking one durability away is very nice.
it is definitely. But yeah, this Lackey Rogue deck is strong. A lot of the times, like it's also what you said during our set review. A lot of the times you're winning by just like waggle picking with Leroy, and that's it.
Yeah, you just gotta get it's just doing 30 damage. That's the plan.
Yep, your plan is that. But it's pretty cool. The deck has a lot of play to it because it has these lackeys, and it has saps and um like ways to recur the lackeys and stuff, and like the waggle pick. So there's a lot of interesting there's a lot of interesting lines in the deck and a lot of non-obvious plays, it makes it feel, like a very fun tempo rogue deck. Um, and it can play a pretty long and grindy game. It doesn't just run out of steam. But then you have those games where you're just like, drawing your entire deck and then killing them with Waggle Pick and Leroy.
Yeah, that's I guess that's where Rogue is at now.
Yeah, very cool. That is pretty much all Rogue is doing. It's just different variations of this deck. People, I think, are trying to find the best lists, and yeah, it seems really strong. At least according to the first VS report, it is both the most played and the best deck.
Damn.
On HS Replay, it is not the class with the highest win rate, but it's hard to know. It's hard to know what these things actually mean. Like, there's all kinds of factors that are tough to account for, like skill, and also, what part of the ladder, what day, what the rest of the meta looks like. Yeah, there's seldom a truly best deck in Hearthstone. We rarely see that situation.
We have here and there, but
we have
Druid's been pretty good at taking that crown.
Totally.
But I guess so this deck, the lists at least that are running like Sap are gonna be that's a card that is prepared to stop a tall enemy.
Yeah.
Sap is not good if your opponent's wide, but
Right.
it is devastating if your opponent's tall. So they've got a lot of play against Mage. What other classes have we said are actually even that good thus far? We like Mage.
Hunter.
Hunter.
Doing fantastic.
Yep, so it can be good against Hunter, especially if you're playing against mechs and they just magnetize a bunch of stuff into one guy, and you've got Sap, you're golden. And also you could be using Vendetta. Some of the lists are using the Hench Clan Burglar, the 4-mana, 4/3 that discovers a card from another class. So you could potentially also be using Vendetta, but
Yeah.
these are only good against tall decks. So I think one of the there's always a balance between the 9 classes, of course, but we can sometimes isolate specific relationships that are very meaningful. Like when Jade Druid was really effective, one of the ways it specifically impacted the meta was preventing or making nearly impossible a fatigue-based strategy, and the slower control decks really just had no business on ladder anymore. But maybe by being weak to other strategies, like really, really fast, aggressive strategies, those were more effective because of the abundance of Jade Druid. If this Lackey Rogue deck is really, really good, but it's also notably weak against Token Druid, you can expect that to drive up the frequency of play of Token Druid.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
And both decks are definitely, those are both tier 1. Yeah, those are the 2 tier 1 decks on Vicious Syndicate. So you can expect to see some push back and forth between those 2 decks, and depending on which is more or less abundant, really having a meaningful impact. If it's hard to find one number to put a lot of weight on, but I would think that the reported win rates and the reported play frequencies of those 2 decks are going to affect how a lot of other people choose and build their decks.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these are the decks to beat, I think. With Hunter,
Yeah.
these are the decks that are setting the clock. The ones that will beat you the fastest, or the ones that are going to set the value bar. Like, if you're going to try to play mid range, you need to get as much value as Rogue to be worth playing, or beat Rogue somehow, or go longer than Rogue.
Mm-hmm.
So it's these are definitely really important decks in the early meta, and I can see Rogue being a significant player for quite a while, just because the shell has a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of ways you can build it. Like you said, you can play Vendetta, or you could not. You could play Sap, or you could not. It has several options for top end payoffs, like Heist Baron, with more lackey cards like Evil Cable Rat or whatever. Or you could just not play that and just stick to the miscreants and try to get value out of those, and just play Hench Clan Thug and just crush your opponent with that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's interesting. Very strong.
I think both Tess Greymane and Captain Hooktusk have the potential to provide some pretty powerful late games to different rogue decks, and that might be a direction it takes either within this expansion or next expansion, because those are both very, very strong finishers.
Yeah, that's true. Tess is a card that is really cool and also pretty underplayed.
It's really easy to underestimate it if you don't realize she'll also replay minions and hero cards.
Yeah, I mean that's very strong.
You could if you hit a Zul'jin, you could do another one.
No, that'd be pretty sick.
Or you could also just play Hunter.
Yeah, right. You could just hit Zul'jin
If
naturally.
that's what you really wanted to do, but if you play Hunter, you can only do it once per game. If you play Rogue, you might be able to, who knows how many times.
Well, I mean, if a lot of people are playing Hunter, just play Rogue to play Hunter. Just play, you're trying to get Zul'jin, just queue into a lot of Hunters.
Meta solved.
There we go.
I think, you know what's weird? I'm pretty sure the 4/3 does not discover from your opponent's class. I'm pretty sure that it's just it just shows you 3 random cards from non-rogue classes.
Yes, that is the case.
So that's trippy, because I don't think most of them work that way.
No, most cards do not. With Rogue, it's typically your opponent's class, but that card is like, who knows what you get off of it.
Yeah, I wonder why they made that decision. Is it just like a thief that doesn't care who it steals from? I'm not really sure how the or would it have been too strong if it was your opponent's class? Does that actually affect the power level?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think the answer to that question is obvious. I think that is an empirical question.
I guess it definitely will increase how hard it is to predict what they're going to get off of it is. So that might make it stronger in the sense of how hard it is to play against.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I mean, it's unique, which is cool. And I think that you can make an argument that like the quality of the card is more constant with respect to the meta. Because like I don't know if that is I don't know if that's actually a deliberate design decision or actually plays like an important role, like versus just making it be your opponent's class, but it's definitely a feature of the card that like hallucinate or whatever, that the quality of that card actually depends entirely on the class that are being played, but the quality of this card does not.
That's a good point. Yeah, you don't really do not want to discover warrior cards when you're playing rogue, like, ever.
Yeah, right. They're doing stuff that you don't want to do. They're synergizing with things that you can't do.
Like Dead Man's Hand.
Right, or the Shield Slam or something. Or Brawl. There's just so many dead cards or cards that are just like working against your game plan.
Yeah, though wait. There's that other legendary, not Togwaggle, Tack. That would actually be really spicy with Dead Man's Hand.
Oh, wow. That would actually be pretty sick, yeah. You just copy your hand. Well, meta solved.
There's a new deck for Wild right there.
Yeah, you have to queue up. You just concede all your games until you queue up against a warrior. And by this point, you'll be like rank 15, so you have plenty of time to assemble the combo.
Wow, I mean, I think rank 15 is very ambitious for this deck, but to its credit, you could also play against a warlock and get Plot Twist.
Ooh, yeah, reload. That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's Wild is an interesting place, especially right now where like there haven't really been any meta reports published for Wild at all. So if you want to play you want to do some crazy stuff, that is a reasonable place to go. I've been playing just like a bad Secret Paladin deck there, but I'm like low rank enough that it just crushes.
Right. Yeah, I haven't touched Wild definitely since the set dropped to Absorb in Standard, but it seems like they've been regularly, cleaning it up, taking care of the most degenerate things, like the Naga Sea Witch got addressed and Aviana got nerfed at one point or another. And now there's these new cards that are gonna produce new interactions. It's probably pretty healthy spot right now.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to play there. It's enough cards are out that it is like it's its own format. It's pretty far from what standard does typically, and the power level tends to be different, which is very cool.
Definitely.
I think that's desirable.
Yeah.
So what about Shaman? This class is just fishing it up, right?
So that's really what I've been playing against on ladder as Shaman is mostly Murloc Shaman. It looks like that's what the data is claiming most people are doing. And that definitely ties back into the success of Token Druid. They're kind of both winning, I think, for a similar reason in that going wide with the current pool of cards right now is really good. A lot of classes that typically have a healthy amount of board wipes have just kind of gotten their best board wipes of all taken out, and without really being replaced. I don't. Are they actually using that 2-mana spell that makes their guys summon? Oh yeah, they are. So Soul of the Murloc is kind of like Murloc Shaman's Soul of the Forest.
Oh yeah, that's silly.
I never noticed that the names were almost identical, so now I kind of feel silly for pointing it out like it's an epiphany. But Soul of the Murloc is a new 2-mana spell that gives all your minions Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 Murloc. So now Shaman also has this way to survive board wipes and just continue to destroy their opponent.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Especially because
I was going to say they also have Bloodlust.
Oh yeah, definitely. They like Shaman, so they can actually, that's interesting. I didn't even consider that it is a similar game plan to Druid, maybe a bit weaker or at least a bit different. Maybe weaker on average, but yeah, with Bloodlust, it is a very similar game plan. Between that and Murloc War Leader, oftentimes are going to be playing kind of the same game.
Yeah, I don't think that like they got the weapon. Like Lickum is pretty solid.
Yeah, it's a good weapon.
And that Underbelly Angler is sweet, though it looks like they're not using the legendary main deck. But like you pointed out, the something Finn Scargill, the 4-mana 4/4 legend is definitely the fact that it exists makes Underbelly Angler better.
I think so. Oh yeah, because I mean you could get it off of the Angler, and if you're running it main deck, it is a combo with the Angler.
It's definitely been played against me, and it definitely was not in their main deck, and it was definitely good.
Yeah, I mean that is quite strong, and there are a bunch of 1-drop Murlocs right now, and this is in a time where Paladin's relatively weak, you're not going to see a lot of consecrations. There's no Maelstrom Portal. There's not really a lot of decks that are playing things like Lightning Storm. There's no Spirit Lash. There's no Defile. So this is a good time to play a bunch of cheap guys and crush your opponent before they really get to play Hearthstone.
We've also got so we don't really have Control Shaman. That was one of the first decks I tried to build when the set dropped because I was so stoked on Hagatha's scheme. And Shaman is one of the 3 classes that has a hero card. So I naturally assumed that it would be one of the best places to go for a nice, strong control deck. And I mean, I don't think Control Shaman is doing well at all. I could never really get it to work. It seemed like between Hagatha's trigger on giving you a spell when you play a minion, and the fact that there's a couple of minions like Sludge Slurper and Evil Cable Rat that will give you a lackey, which is a minion, so you can just get a ton of value out of them, that you simply play Hearthstone and don't die until you hit Hagatha, and then play Hagatha and proceed to win. But that is basically a really good idea in Warrior.
Yeah, right.
Shaman just doesn't have the board wipes that maybe it did at one point when it had Maelstrom Portal, but it definitely doesn't have the board wiping power of Warrior. And if you want to be playing Control, you're going to need to be able to fight Murloc Shaman, apparently, and definitely Token Druid. And for that, you would really ideally have like super duper board wipes, like a card like Warpath that you can play over and over to also clear away the Soul of the Forest minions or the Soul of the Murloc minions. Pick your deck. And only Warrior really has that now. The only other way to really like completely clear your opponent's board out if they've played one of those two spells would be Wild Pyromancer. The Warlock was very happy for quite a while with Defile, because Defile could also do that in one card, which was insane. That was just an insane Hearthstone card. But now they've got Shriek, and Shriek is definitely not going to do all of that work for them. So it's I guess that's part of the reason why Control is not really flourishing right now. The power level of this Shaman deck, the Murloc Shaman deck, and Token Druid is really punishing the slow control-y decks that maybe have answers for tall problems, but don't have answers for wide problems.
Yeah, I think so too.
Or an abundance of answers for wide problems.
Right. Alas,
but it's on the other hand, it's pretty cool to see some Murloc stuff actually coming together. That's something that it's felt like they've tried to do multiple different times throughout Hearthstone, and has often missed.
Yeah.
Or it only it stuck in the wrong way, just play a mid-range deck but throw Finja in it and Murloc War Leader and Bluegill and just that bit, and that's not really a Murloc deck. This seems to be a legitimate stick of the Murloc strategy, so that's cool.
Yeah, I think so too. It's very, very neat. It is. Yeah, I guess now's the time to play Murlocs, especially early on in the meta, before things are really resolved and the slow decks are good.
Mm-hmm.
Although Bomb Warrior is good, so you have to be fast enough to beat that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. I also just noticed that you can use Thunderhead to make your two little 1/1 elementals, but then play Soul of the Murloc, and you'll be able to get minions out of them.
Yeah, that's very fantastic. I mean, Thunderhead is a really, really strong card that was just begging for the right shell. Basically, all of the Shaman decks that have existed since that card were released, or many of them at least, have played that card. But Shaman's just never been in a good enough place to, really see a lot of play. But Thunderhead is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing somebody find a way to use a control strategy with Shaman, because Hagatha scheme is just so cool.
Oh yeah, I agree. Do you want to move on to Warlock?
Yeah, let's check it out. I'm not actually. I've not tried to play Warlock at all in the new meta.
So I have some great news for you.
What's that?
In Wild, people are playing Darkest Hour.
Oh my! You mentioned that was one of your picks for our set review.
Yeah, that was one of the. So not only was that one of my picks, but that was a card that we proceeded to say was basically terrible.
Yep.
And it turns out that that's basically true. But that did not stop a couple of brave souls in Wild from jamming in their deck and making something synergistic. So what the deck does is it plays Rafam's Scheme and Fiendish Circle, which are two cards that just summon imps on your board. They're spells, they're not minions. It plays those cards, it plays Blood Bloom, and it plays Darkest Hour.
Mm-hmm.
So your goal here is to, play board wipes like Defile and Corrupting Mist and Demon Wrath and stuff, and Hellfire, and just try to survive the early game, get a hand that has Blood Bloom, Darkest Hour, and one of these imp-making cards, and then cast Darkest Hour and get Void Lords and Yasharj and Lich King and Ruby and Unraveler and just go ham. Void Callers.
Of course.
Yeah, so it's just a very silly deck that I would really like to try playing. It seems really, really cool.
I'm sure it has Blood Reaver Gul'dan in it as well.
Yeah, I mean the list I'm looking at doesn't.
Oh my lord!
It should. Yeah, it definitely should. This is a Gul'dan deck if you have Void Lords in here.
So it's basically just like another high roll deck.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a bad Big Priest.
Or bad Naga Sea Witch.
Yes.
Really bad Naga Sea Witch, maybe.
Terrible Naga Sea Witch. That deck was crazy. At least at least for face rolling people and just pub stomping. I played that deck from like the past rank 10, like 15 or something like that, to rank 5 with like an over 80% win
Oh
rate.
my lord!
But once I hit rank 5, I like really couldn't get too much past that. People were like ready for that deck, and even Shaman was just too good in the hands of like a skilled pilot.
Mm.
But yeah, it was a really strong deck.
Yeah, Totem Golem is good.
Yep. Oh yeah, I mean that's still strong. Still a really good deck.
Looks like in Standard, Warlock has gone back to Abusive Sergeant.
Yeah, I love it because that's a funny story, you know, Darkest Hour being good. And in Standard, it's got a completely different silly story to tell. And that's a deck that just has like a billion 1-drops and Magic Carpet.
Yeah, I can show you the world.
It's awesome. I was really surprised the first time I saw a Magic Carpet hit the board, and I'm even more surprised to see that it's still hitting the board. People are still doing it, but I guess the Magic Carpet is a good card if your deck has like 14 to 16 1-drops in it.
Jeez Louise, yeah, I'm trying to give attention to all of these, and some of them like really look awful, like Witchwood Imp, but I guess if that's the plan, as long as it costs 1, it's interesting. There's also the Lackeys, which is very easy to overlook, but they all count as, you know, you'll be playing them from your hand, so they'll get +1 attack and rush.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so this is interesting. I wonder how this is playing out in Wild with like a Hobgoblin.
Yep, that could be mean, though. I could see that being even too slow for Wild.
Potentially, yeah, that's true. I mean, I have seen Hobgoblin played in Wild, but yeah, I don't know what the state of aggro is like right now. Definitely worth thinking about, though. This is pretty hilarious.
Yeah, the decks to beat would be something like Token Druid, Murloc Shaman, all of these rogue decks, and Magic Carpet, which, in case you didn't know, is a 3-mana neutral. It's a 1/6, right? Which is pretty generous health for a 3-drop, and whenever you play a 1-drop minion from your hand, a 1-cost minion, it gets a permanent 1 attack, and it gets rush. So it serves a bunch of different purposes. It's almost like a lord, but for 1-cost minions. And it also allows you to actually like clear your opponent's stuff out quickly and efficiently. If you're playing against Rogue and they're trying to build a board, you get to blow it up. If you're playing against Token Druid, you could play 2 or 3 1-drops that are going to live after an attack and clear out everything they've got. Flame Imp, Flame Imp can come down as 4 damage immediately for 1 mana. They have a surprising amount of like interaction and ability to actually interrupt their opponent. And then it's also got Archvillain Rafam, which it's a 7-drop that, like, everything that costs 1, 2, the 3-drop is Magic Carpet, and then we got Rafam. And he just sits there for this insane potential late game where you replace every single one of your cards with legendary minions. So even if you do kind of have concerns about a deck that's all 1-drops, if you just keep tapping and keep your opponent from winning, you might eventually get to a Golden Monkey situation where you take your opponent to a completely different world of hurt.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Because it's like this concession that the deck is terrible.
Yes.
And so they're like, well, we know the deck is bad. Like, we're not trying to play fair games. We're trying to play games where like we beat our opponent. They didn't actually get to play against us. And that's why we have this Archvillain Rafam in here, because like some games that's not going to be true, and this is our Hail Mary.
Exactly. It's like, what do we do if our opponent actually plays Hearthstone against us?
Yeah, like you lose easily.
Well, let's just throw this really good legendary in, really well statted, like a 7/8 taunt for 7, which is definitely beyond War Golem's payroll. And then the carpet really ties the room together.
Yeah, it's a funny looking deck. Yeah, I gotta experiment with this one. I think in Wild this could do some really mean stuff, because you do have like Possessed Villager and Mekaru and Hobgoblin and stuff. Might not be good enough, but I mean, now's the time. I think the decks are going to be mostly terrible in Wild right now.
Forget if I don't believe. Yeah, it's hard to say, but I think Magic Carpet does not give rush, almost at haste, to the 1/1s that'll like pop out of Haunted Creeper.
It's just play, yeah.
Yep, it's play. So, not that it isn't completely insane with something like Mekaru or Possessed Village, but
yeah, it's still
Possessed Villager, but it's not going to buff the babies that pop out of them.
Yeah, that's okay though. I mean, you still got some sticky things, and that's kind of what you need.
Let's take a look at Garrosh.
Yeah, he's in a good spot.
Yeah, maybe too good of a spot, right?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's kind of got a monopoly on control. So we were wrong, and Bomb Warrior is good.
Yeah, that if there's a really big whiff from our last review, it was our analysis of what Bomb Warrior was going to do. We definitely did not think it was going to work, and I still don't really know how it does.
Yeah, it's
all the Elec, I guess, right?
I think that's not all of it, but that is definitely a part of it. Like, I think the 5 damage is a lot, and this is, I think Fatigue Warrior proper is like, it is absolutely a deck that can be played, but it's not something that's really been in favor for a long time. But what has been in favor are like mid-range control warriors. I mean, I say in favor. It hasn't ever really been it hasn't been fantastic for a long time, but the control warriors have been of that type. So like the taunt decks, like with a quest or odd warrior, or like, you know, those sorts of decks are just, they're like chunky mid-range decks, and that's what this one is. And in that kind of deck, like, you can play the survive anything game and let your opponent draw out their bombs and just like kind of chip at them. That's your strategy against a lot of decks. Like, you can interact really early with fast decks. So I think the 5 damage is just a lot.
It's more than 4, and it's definitely more than what we thought it would be.
Oh yeah, it's way more than 0. Yeah, I think it's just like a mixture of the fact that they can make the game go long and chip damage at you, and that's like not enough. Also, Boom is good.
That's what most people are focusing on, is that this particular hero card can give you, quote, infinite value, unquote, which is true to some extent for sure, and it might be the best of the hero cards that are legal. That's kind of hard to say. I do think that if you're playing Control Warrior, you're going to be relying really heavily on the Doctor being in. But I don't think it's... It seems like we're not necessarily at a place where we need to worry about banning or nerfing any of these cards. There's definitely decks that are winning more than Warrior. And you can definitely beat a Dr. Boom. It still costs 7 mana.
Yeah, I don't think Dr. Boom is in need of a nerf really at all. It's easy to focus on those cards. It's always easy to focus on the flashy legendary and be like, oh, that's the card that's the problem.
Right.
I think people did that with Ultimate Infestation for a really long time. You know, ourselves included. But like, yeah, I think in this case, like, it's not. The Boom was around and Warrior wasn't amazing. It's not Boom. It's not like these cards push Boom over the edge. It's that Boom was like these cards are really good and Boom is also good, so they go in the same deck.
It, as usual, I think, is that losing to Dr. Boom after winning maybe feels bad. It's a lot like Rexar almost was behaving, except in Warrior it is like maybe extremely appropriate and Hunter extremely inappropriate. So that's another reason why I don't think it's like really a big deal. Flavor-wise, it makes a lot more sense. You do still want, like, he doesn't just work. Like, you would really ideally have some mechs in your deck, and that's going to make him work better.
Yeah, for sure. It's not like he's just an automatic, like, one card combo kind of thing.
Exactly. But I think people are definitely trying to treat him that way. And but I think if there's a reason that like Warrior's really good right now, it's because of cards like Dinomatic and Warpath. Yes. Those cards are really good against Token Druid. They're really good against Murloc Shaman. and they're pretty great against Rogue, and those are the other really good decks. So there you go.
Yeah. This class has 6 board wipes in its deck. It has 2 Warpaths, 2 Brawls, and 2 Dynamatics. It has Super Collider, which is like in that weapon is the worst to play against.
Yeah, that card was misnamed. It should be called like Ultra Collider or Super Duper Duper Collider. I friggin' love that card.
Yeah, or it's Super Conceder. It's like I hate it because if you have just a couple cards in your hand, you just like can't play minions anymore, and you need to like you're giving something up to that card. You're giving a lot up to that card. Both in terms of like the extra turns you give them to try to set up a play that doesn't just get your board cleared immediately, and also you're going to actually lose minions to it, and it's a very, very strong card. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, Warrior's in a great place if you're trying to play control. If you're trying to like slowly win the game, Garrosh is the guy you want to be.
Oh yeah, it's one of the few ways. I mentioned trying to beat a Conjurer Mage with Control Warrior. Control Warrior is one of the main decks I've been playing since rotation. And Super Collider is key because that's how you beat 2 Mountain Giants. There's no better way to beat 2 Mountain Giants and the next 2 Mountain Giants and the next 2 Mountain Giants than Super Collider. Oh, yeah. And that's just kind of amazing.
You had a game where you went to turn limit, right?
Yeah, that was not playing Warrior. That was playing Immortal Prelate Paladin. Oh and I had the astonishing luck to queue up against an Immortal Prelate Paladin.
Oh, wow. So you guys were the only 2 people in the ladder playing that deck, and you faced each other?
Yep. So we basically were taking turns buffing our Immortal Prelates, and then the other person would play Shrink Ray. So by the end of it, each of us had 2... Like, one of us had a 2/1 Immortal Prelate, and I had 2 1/1 Immortal Prelates, and just taking turns playing an Immortal Prelate and hero powering and passing, and fast forward 45 turns, it was a draw.
That's amazing.
I was hoping that they would like make like a mistake on like overthink it essentially and attack wrong, and I even think at one point they did change what they were doing every turn, and I thought it would work out, but I was wrong. It was just like it was a legitimate stalemate.
That's fantastic.
It could have gone another 500 turns and nothing would have been different.
That is very good. I mean, it's good that you experienced that. I've never experienced a tie in this game.
It was something else. I've definitely had one where both players took lethal damage, but the turn limit of Hearthstone, in my personal experience, was still not but a rumor. But it's real, boys and girls.
We are here. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I hope that doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, I don't expect it to. Like you said, we were the only 2 people, and probably will be the only 2 people that are playing that deck. So, odds are it won't happen again. And the Warrior decks, like, so that's the thing, is that it went this mid-range direction, but you're still definitely going to use 2 Warpath because that card just friggin' rocks. And you're definitely still going to use 2 Dynomatic, because that card just friggin' rocks. So even the more aggressive... Like, I think the most aggressive Warrior deck I saw had Korkron Elite and Frothing Berserker. But you can bet it still had Warpath. Warpath is insane with Frothing Berserker.
Yeah, it's a strong card. Warpath is... Warpath's really good. It's nice. I mean, it has flexibility. It's like, it's overcosted, but if it wipes the board, you're willing to pay almost all your mana for that. I mean, Twisting Nether's a good card, right? So Warpath is absolutely up there, with the stars. That is a super excellent card in the control.
Oh yeah, and maybe you got some Acolyte of Pain in your deck, or you need your opponent's minion to be damaged. I saw someone playing Devastate. Do you know what that card does?
No, what is
that?
Right?
It's 1 mana. I actually don't remember what set it's from. 1 mana, deal 4 damage to a damaged minion.
I did not know that card existed.
Yeah, they're just playing like a single copy, but like, sneaking it in on a warpath, stuff like that, getting it in here and there. There's definitely more than one way to do warrior, but I don't think the reason it's been effective is just because Dr. Boom is broken.
No, I don't think so at all. I think you could take that card out of the deck and it'd still be really good.
Oh yeah,
it's great. I mean, I'm pleased that Garrosh is where he is right now, after generally being mediocre for such a long time.
Yeah, he was sitting on the bench for a good while. I think Vicious Syndicate still has a little comic going about Thrall and Garrosh. Yeah, they do. Cute. Thrall and Garrosh is still going. So
very, very good.
I guess Garrosh might take a break from being in these stories, since he's actually doing pretty well.
Yeah. I think Anduin will have to, grab a seat on the bench.
It is a distinct possibility. He's not doing much, and I also don't see what else he could be doing.
Yeah, it's he's in a bad spot. But that's okay. I think it's fine for not every class to be good at all times.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting design philosophy that I think came about in the world of games as service, where games are evolving constantly, and patches basically change the game, like League of Legends being a good example. I think that dev team realized that you could just nerf the best character and make another character the best character for a while, and that's a completely fair way to play your game.
I mean, apparently, right?
Yeah, I think it's
fine. Proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, absolutely. People like it. It does make things new and fresh, and it's a good way to sort of recycle old content. So, in this game, you're not exactly recycling old content because you're releasing new cards, but in a way, you get to sort of cash in on the classic cards again. So it's pretty cool.
And then also, there were a pretty solid amount of cool throwback cards in this new set. I mean, we already pointed out how Soul of the Murloc, a completely new card, is not even, it's very close to the exact same name as Soul of the Forest, which is one of the first Hearthstone cards, but very similar in effect, but in a different class. And Hecklebot, and that's a way to sort of do a Death Lord effect. There's a bunch of different examples. That was another thing I was really excited for about this set, is how many of the effects that were, sort of throwbacks, but now in
Mysterious Blade.
yeah, well, that's like a throw a knife into your back. But
right.
Seeing all those interact with all of the modern strategies, it doesn't seem like. So one card that I'm not seeing any of is Spellbreaker.
Yeah, same. I think that there's not a whole lot of taunts right now. There's no Tar Creeper.
Yep, there you go. No Tar Creeper, and then also nothing like Bone Mare. There's no Spike Ridge Steed. A lot of the best payoffs for playing a Spellbreaker, no Void Lord, are gone. And then also there's all these wide decks. You don't want to play a Spellbreaker against a Murloc Shaman or a Token Druid.
No, definitely not. That card is really very not good against a go wide deck. It's exactly not what you want to be doing.
So maybe that means that the way to go is find a good way to make a really fat, powerful thing, a very tall thing that might have been weak to silence, but will now win you the game because no one's using it.
Yeah, I think Mage is kind of going in that direction a little bit.
Yeah.
But there might be other creative ways to get it out.
I don't think the Mage deck is using Polymorph, and
no, I don't
Murloc Shaman is definitely not using Hex.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. And I mean, they could always check these cards in, but for the time being, it would be tough to squeeze. Both of those decks would have to pay something pretty dear, in consistency to squeeze those cards in. Those cards are explicitly against the plans of both of those decks. So there are other decks that can play Spellbreaker just fine, like Rogue, but not every deck can.
And Rogue has a very legitimate 4-mana 4/3 to play instead.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, if they're looking to play a 4 mana 4/3, they have a better option, so they'd have to pay a little bit. But yeah, it seems good.
Unless they play the Hench Clan guy. Is that what it's called? Oh, am I saying the wrong name?
Hench Clan Thug?
No, Hench Clan Burglar.
Mm.
That's the guy that discovers the spell 4 mana 4/3.
Yeah, the 4/3. Yeah.
If you hit silence off of it, then it is a spellbreaker.
Hey, that's very funny. You're right. It's exactly a spellbreaker.
You could also trigger your Firewalker.
Yeah. Ooh.
New deck.
You have to play in wild, get a flame waker, then get silence, and you did it.
Build your own spellbreaker.
Build your own spellbreaker that also pings for 2. Absolutely worth it.
They should call Henchkind Burglar Spell Builder.
Mm.
They're definitely gonna make that card.
Yeah.
That's gonna exist
perhaps.
at some point. I like
we
this
will
meta
see.
though. I think that the overall chatter is mostly quieter than usual. It's just like the inevitable complaining. Like the people are going to complain about something.
Yeah.
And I think most of the complaints are actually just that, and there aren't actually many legitimate complaints being thrown around. I also think that I tend to like a meta where Spellbreaker and Hex aren't too strong. I like when you can kind of start looking at lists where you're including more 7-cost minions and 8-cost minions and Yisseras and stuff like that, and not needing to really be afraid of getting punished for that, because that could be really fun.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that too. I mean, I think there's other things that are going to punish you for playing those types of decks right now, but part of it being the lack of card pool. But over time, that will change.
What have you been playing? Any classes besides Rogue?
Not really in Standard. I played a little bit of the Hunter like Geppetto deck, but that's not super good. I just happened to open all the cards for it.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sure if I had a Geppetto, I would have been running through a couple of those as well.
yeah, it was pretty exciting to see that I just had all those cards. And I'm like, oh, I have to play this deck. But that's pretty much it. Other than that, it's been like Rogue.
Is Geppetto really seeing any effective play right now?
I don't think so. I think it's pretty much just that deck, and that deck is not that good.
It still seems like it's got to be a pretty strong card somewhere.
I feel like there might be a home for it in Wild somewhere. Like even maybe if it's just Geppetto Hunter or Geppetto Mage, like you might be able to pull something off because you have more tricks in Wild.
Mhm.
So there might just be more crazy stuff to do there, or there might just be decks that can take advantage of 1-mana Malygos a little better. So maybe Druid.
You could play OG Elise and then play the map and put the Golden Monkey in your deck and then draw it as a 1-drop.
That's cute.
That is cute. I kind of see him, if he's really going to be effective, not in like a combo focused deck necessarily, but a deck that has just like a pretty sweet top end and like a pretty nice chunk of 7, 8, 9 cost minions that maybe it has other ways of cheating them out. Like I could, now that I'm saying it aloud, a Warlock deck that's using Skull and Void Lords, you're already fine with that. That's already really good. But if you can also sometimes draw them and they cost 1, that's pretty good too.
Yeah. And I mean, if you did want to lean into the silly combo route, Hemet would be an interesting card with him.
Oh yeah, if you want to still run your low cost guys,
Yeah.
but you want to then find a way to actually pull it off. Yeah, there might be something between Geppetto and a card like Baleful Banker and Hemet to actually have a legitimate way of stacking your deck consistently at the end of the game, rather than just needing to cross your fingers, which is all you can do in Standard.
Right. Yeah, that's the crappy part, is that there isn't much more to do than that. Or I mean, so I think it basically comes down to like making Geppetto more consistent. Because the payoff is there. Like I think the Malagos option is good for most classes, especially in Wild. Um, but the problem becomes coming up with a better plan B or making plan A happen every game.
Definitely can't do the second thing in Standard.
No, you can't. But you can come up with a better plan B, which is what Hunter tries to do, but it's not a good enough plan B. But I think in Wild, you have a lot more options.
Primordial Drake once again.
Sure, yeah, totally,
That's excellent at 1 mana.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, if you're just trying to get some value. One thing I have heard of is in Wild is Archmage Vargoth with the Mage Quest reward.
Oof. Does that
Yeah.
actually give you the 2 turns?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. That's or at least according to a Reddit post. So that's pretty slick.
That's fun.
Yeah, I like that. But what do you think about wrapping up?
Let's cook this. Let's cook this goat.
Sure. Yeah, goat's pretty tasty. We're actually, little known fact, premier goat tweeting Twitter account. So come follow us on twitter.com/LastTurnHS for goat action.
So much goat.
There's a lot of goats there. I don't know if there's ever even been a single goat. But you can also go to facebook.com/LastTurnHS for a lot of the same content, but also some different content. Also, it's on Facebook. So, if you want your minions, memes, and your last turn in one place, that's the place to go. You can go to iTunes or YouTube or Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play to get our podcast, the content that you're currently listening to. So in case you didn't know you were listening to it, that's where you can get it. You can also go to lastturnhs.com and find links to any of these places, along with a visual spoiler, which I've actually found pretty helpful through the past 2 episodes to look through. So, you can do it there.
Thank you.
It's not an annoying one. You don't need to click at all. You can just scroll, and that's really nice. So
I find myself, whenever I'm blanking on one of the new cards, I just type lastturnhs.com, and very rapidly I'm able to refresh my memory.
yeah, I've liked it. It's been good. Yeah, so check us out, tweet at us, and tell us that we're wrong. Remind us that we're wrong.
Yeah, definitely give us all your negative feedback. You can keep your positive feedback to yourselves.
Yeah,
maybe
please
give
do
that to somebody else.
Yeah, tweet that at someone else. Tweet that at like the dudes who do Daring Reporter. Tweet your positive feedback about us to them. Did they even do that anymore? I don't think they do.
I think one of them is still running that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not super sure.
Wait, no,
either.
I actually think he started a completely different podcast with someone else.
Oh, that's sick.
Oh yeah.
We'll have to check that
Oh
out.
yeah, that's awesome. But let us know what you think. If there's particular topics that you would like us to talk about, or particular cards that you would like us to, give some attention to in one way or another, you know where to find us. Tweet us, poke us, like us, smash that bell.
Smash that bell indeed, and we will catch you guys next turn.
See you next turn, everybody.